Trent Meacham, it's such a blessing and honor to get you on the podcast. I first heard your name. I was probably a freshman or sophomore in high school at an FCA event and some cheerleaders. So I was in Danville, you were in Champaign, about 45 minutes apart. Some cheerleaders came, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they said that you had Philippians 4:13 on your shoes, and this is like an inspiration to our entire group in Danville High School. So from there, got to follow your career and big fan. But just want to throw it to you. I know you have a unique perspective on sports and where you've gone, but just what does it mean to you to be a Christian coach?
Well, Chad, thanks for having me on, and cool story. You never know the impact you're having, or something even subtle or slight, the message that can proclaim to others. So thanks for sharing that. I did not know that. What it means to be a Christian coach. First, I like that you put Christian first. I think it's not about being a coach that happens to be a Christian or an athlete or a whatever, but we're Christians first and foremost. And I think being a follower of Jesus, it's a worldview, and hopefully that impacts everything that I do, how I interact in this world, how I treat people, how I lead myself, how I represent Jesus, how I build up others, how I realize there's always there's something a lot more than winning or losing a game, or whatever it may be. There's something more, because I'm first and foremost a Christian. And so I think, I hope, and this isn't always the case, but I would hope and I strive that just directs the way that I see in this world, the way that I see myself, the way that I see others. And whether it's I'm coaching, my kids' team, or running a basketball camp, or whatever, in any way that I interact with others, that who I am as a Christian, I hope that leads the way.
That's really good. That's really good. And I didn't prep you for this question, but just curious whether it's youth coaching, or you just had a chance to be a high school coach or a college coach. As far as living out your faith, what would maybe be the first thing that you would want to kind of show up with and say, hey, this is what I'm all about. Even if you're not, maybe you're at a public school, not able to proclaim the name of Jesus, but what would you want that to be? How would you want that to be seen?
That's a great question, and hopefully the fruit of the Spirit. There's many different attributes of that. My first reaction, though, is joy. Especially we're talking about coaching sports, and whether that's at the youth level or at the college or professional level, no matter what the stakes are, hopefully we can approach anything with some joy. And as Christians, look, the victory's already won, and we should be able to show up in whatever we're doing with some joy. And there should be something that's attractive to how we live, how we lead, and hopefully that's something that as Christian coaches that we can bring, no matter the situation. We can bring some joy to what we're doing.
I love that. Great reply. And just want to go back to the onset, back to the beginning. Can you just tell us a little bit about your upbringing with family, your faith, and basketball or other sports?
Yeah, so I grew up not too far away from Chad, in Champaign, Illinois, Central Illinois. And from my youngest memories, I think of my family. Both my parents were, I guess, athletes back in their day. I have a sister that's 2 years older and a younger sister that's 9 years younger. So it was mostly my older sister and I growing up. And really, I think of family, throwing friends in there. But then the other two things that are the most vivid memories from my childhood would be sports and church. Now, I love sports. I didn't necessarily like church growing up, but those two things seem to just, that's what we did on a weekly basis, multiple times a week. We were doing sports. We were at church. Basketball practice just happened to be for years and years on the third story gym that was about a half a court in length, but there's two hoops on there at the church in downtown Champaign. So that's how I grew up, very involved in church. Now, like I said, wasn't really engaged with it in terms of I enjoyed it, but was there and showing up. And I think I had a good understanding of who God was, who God is, and a belief in God from a young age because of just that upbringing. And in sports, really, I did it all. Besides football, never played football because I was a big soccer kid growing up. Soccer, baseball, basketball. I was on a swim team for a couple years. I think I did tennis a little bit, then football maybe in the backyard at the park, street hockey. I did it all. Basketball and soccer were the two sports that I uh, thrived at a bit more and enjoyed the most. And basketball kind of emerged as that sport that I didn't just love to play, but I really loved the practice. And so I kind of ran with that one because I just enjoyed working at it more so than the other sports.
Gotcha. When did you kind of zone in on basketball? Like, all right, I'm not going to do some of these other sports, but like basketball is my pursuit and my dream.
Yeah, in grade school, I did it all. I think once I was in middle school, I was more just a basketball and soccer kid
Gotcha.
doing both of those. And then by the time I got to high school, it was just basketball. Probably still played some, tackle football in the park here and there, but I became more of a one sport basketball guy once I got to high school.
Nice. Yeah. And so at that time, I remember just checking the News Gazette, reading the highlights under Coach Lavin, I believe at Centennial, and you were crushing it, earning a scholarship to Dayton, I believe. Can you just tell us what did you learn? Why did you go to Dayton? And then what did you learn in that year? I saw you're lighting it up 46% from threes. So you had a great freshman year, but just tell us about that transition there and then out from there.
Well, I'll back up a little bit. When I was in high school, I actually got hurt my sophomore year. And I
Okay.
want to just share this because for me, that was my first time in my life that I couldn't play basketball. Here's this
Mm,
thing that I love, that I was passionate about, that really was my identity. And that was a real crucial point in my walk as a Christian, as a believer, and growing up in the church. And that was a turning point where now I realize I can't base my life, my worth, my enjoyment on something as fickle as this basketball that can easily be taken away. And so that was a real blessing in disguise. I missed my whole season, was out for about 12 months, and where I really grew in my faith and accepted Jesus as my savior. Now then growing from that, I wish I could say I never looked back in anything, but was able to have some success and go on and play in college. And I would say when I got to Dayton, really what was critical at that point, I realized that as a young person, 18 years old, all of a sudden, now I'm on my own. And there's many things that there's a lot of nuance to, and there's different paths to be able to have some success and do this and do that, and so everything isn't so clear. But I also realized, hey, there's some of these decisions that I'm faced with. It's very clear what should I be doing versus what should I not be doing, and I'm not always making the right choice, but I realized that I needed to surround myself with some good people. I needed to, really lean on my faith, and this was an opportunity for me to make decisions on my own, and that was there's some real challenges there as a young person,
mm,
and you're exposed to different things, you're offered different things, but also realize, hey, this is really important to walk the walk, not just talk it. And it was a real growth year for me,
mm.
being a young person, going away for school and playing college basketball.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's such a hard season of life to just get thrown out there. What was it like then? So the next year you came back to Champaign to be at the University of Illinois. Tell us about that process. How did that go down?
It's interesting, transferring. I really wasn't thinking about it much. And sometimes looking back, I'm surprised I did it because I had a good thing at Dayton,
Hmm.
really strong basketball school. We had a great group of freshmen. I played a good amount as a freshman, but there was just something in me that felt like Illinois was this dream that I wanted to do. And after having a taste of college basketball, this belief that, hey, I think I can play at this level, and I want to take that risk.
Yeah.
When I transferred back to Illinois, I didn't have a scholarship right away, and I was a walk on, and I had to earn that. I had to redshirt a year, so there were some challenges in there, but it. I had a little bit more patience out of high school. I wanted to play right away,
Hmm.
and not that Dayton was a bad choice at all. Again, it's been a great school. They probably had a better basketball program than Illinois in the past decade, but was fortunate to really live out a dream, playing for the Illini. This is, I grew up in this community, rooting for this team, and so that was just very special for myself, for my family, And then after a year of getting acclimated to school there, to the Big Ten, ready to actually step on the court and compete that following year. So really a special thing for myself to be able to live out a dream of mine that I
Yeah.
had as a young kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And this is the Christian Coach podcast, but just as the Middle Illinois basketball fan, just thinking through the timeline as I look at some of those names and the rosters from back in the day. And I was in attendance for a few of the games where you were lighting it up. But just thinking through, Darren Williams, D Brown, they had an amazing run there. But what was it like for you as an athlete stepping in behind, an NBA stud like Darren Williams?
Well, Darren was an all-star Olympian, but D Brown was a bigger name kind of in Champaign and in college basketball in many ways. So coming in behind them, first of all, I wasn't like the heir apparent. That was not me. Like I said, I came back in as a walk-on, and maybe there's a little bit of a feel-good story being a hometown kid coming back to Champaign. I was just focused on getting on the court. How can
Yeah,
I get on the court? What do I need to do to improve and just show coach that, hey, I can bring value to the team. So that was really where my mindset was at. For sure, it was tough, following such a really kind of a historic team that didn't win a title, but really took the college basketball landscape by storm that year. For sure, challenges there because we couldn't quite live up to what they did, but some ups and downs, and really a fantastic experience for myself, and had a very challenging junior season where we were a lot of injuries, some unfortunate things off the court with some teammates. We were booed, and a tough year. But we stuck together. And my senior year, we finished second in our conference, got back to the NCAA tournament, and just a special experience for me.
that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Just I know you mentioned the injury as a sophomore in high school, and then there at the University of Illinois. Just curious who other than your parents, who was kind of investing in you as far as your character, your faith development, but who was there in your corner supporting you through those things?
Our community is so important, and was fortunate, like I mentioned, growing up in the church. And as I grew and got into college at Dayton, some members of the Athletes in Action staff were very integral in my discipleship as a young person, as a young Christian. At Illinois, that was a fellowship of Christian athletes, and a couple guys on staff there that became mentors that I became very close to. And I've also learned that playing all over the world and having teammates from different countries and you name it, different cultures, you typically can find some other believers no matter where you're at.
Cool.
And it's really important to find that community and to encourage and to strengthen one another. And so I found that wherever I've gone, sometimes they might seem more abundant than other places, but I
Yeah.
think having others that we can do life with, that we can share some of those experiences with, because I'm not someone who's used to growing up in a Christian bubble. I've been in different locker rooms and different cultures where God, being a believer is not the norm. So, but that being said, seeking out a church when we were abroad, seeking out other believers and finding community has been really important.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And what just as far as the journey goes, you finish up at the University of Illinois and you're thinking through that next step. Was it an easy choice for you to go play ball overseas, or were you thinking there might be a tug to just to get a normal job or whatever here in the States?
So I mentioned my dream as a young kid was to play college basketball at
Hmm.
Illinois, being the dream, and was able to live that out. I never dreamed of playing as a pro, and probably because some of that was not believing in myself that I could play. It also was a bit different. I don't think the overseas basketball was because of social media, because of how interconnected our world is now, because of the influence of international basketball in the NBA. It was different even 15 years ago. Things have changed a lot. But I did know that I could play at some level, and I knew that. I went on 2 tours with Athletes in Action. Met my wife through a teammate on one of those tours. Another
No way.
side note there. But doing that, having that experience playing against some professional teams there, I knew, okay, I can play at some level. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm going to get paid anything, but I can play somewhere. Let's kind of give this a shot. And after school, I got married that summer. My wife was a college basketball player as well at St. Louis University, and we got married. And 2 weeks later, we were overseas in Austria, and just like, let's kind of try this out. And frankly, I wanted to go home after a day. I was homesick. I was a little soft, and thankfully my wife was a bit more stubborn than me. It was like, all right, we're going to stick it out this year, but then we're heading home.
Mm,
And it ended up being about a decade of being overseas,
wow.
and an incredible experience. So I'm glad I just went with it. And what's that next step? What can I do next? And that was um, playing for not much money, but continuing that career, and was able to progress from there.
Crazy. That's awesome, and really encouraging to hear about the Athletes in Action tours. As I'm the Athletes in Action director of tennis, restarting here. And but where did you go on those international tours? And can you share a lesson or a big takeaway from those tours?
Wow, well, it was my first time abroad, and I went to France and I went to Germany in consecutive summers. And I'd say beyond one of my teammates, it's his little sister, who's now my wife. Um, it paid off really well going on that trip. But one of the coolest things beyond that is there's a number of guys that I'm still very close with.
Cool.
Not just my brother-in-law. We're good friends. There was no rift there after I started dating his sister. But there's a handful of other guys that this was 2007, 2008, that I was texting a couple guys this morning from those
Mm,
tours. And for whatever reason, just some real strong bonds were formed. Played against some of those guys as a professional overseas, and so I've just kept in touch. Share a lot of experiences as Christians who were basketball players, who were professional players. Many of those guys played overseas. So that's been really, really cool, just to reflect back on the relationships that were formed over the course of 10 days, 2 weeks, 15 years ago.
yeah, that's awesome. Really cool to hear. Um, yeah, just want to transition into some of the stuff that you're into now. Just first as a broadcaster, I'm just curious. I've heard like Ernie Johnson and Clark Kellogg, some of these guys, and just some of their routines to like get ready and prepped before you go, and boom, you're on air, have to come up with something good to say. But just curious, what's the planning like? Why did you get into broadcasting? And yeah, just tell us a little more about that.
You might need to send me what those guys are doing, because they are true professionals, and I'm kind of learning. It's been something I've somewhat fallen into. I was asked to fill in on the radio for some Illini basketball games. Started doing some of that, and just felt like, oh, this is a great way to stay connected to the game.
Yeah.
But you asked about preparation, and one of the things I enjoy most is that preparation aspect. As an athlete, you're always preparing for these performances, and you don't just step out there and play. There's so much that goes into it. So it's not quite the same as competing, but I got to be ready. I got to know the names of these guys. I can't mispronounce a name. I need to understand how the seasons are going. I need to understand who's been hot, what's been working well, what hasn't been working well. So if I'm going into a game, for sure, I'm watching previous games of those teams, and getting a feel for how they play, what happened in the most recent games. If I'm just going into the studio, and we got a halftime show, I have a pulse on what's happening in the league, the Big Ten conference. But I could just kind of show up, watch the game in the first half, and give a quick take on that. So depending on the situation, there's more or less preparation that goes into it. But that's just a fun thing that, as a former athlete, you're used to preparing, and it kind of gives you a little bit of that taste of, okay, I got to be ready to go, because the lights are going to be on. I got to have some energy. I got to know what I'm talking about. I got to be able to pronounce their names right, and something I've just enjoyed doing. Hopefully, I can continue to grow as a communicator.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Is there anything that you are doing? I'm just thinking about your role in Champaign, just in building relationships for your company and the broadcast, but just anything that you're doing on purpose. Like, I'm really trying to improve in these areas to be a better communicator, or grow in my leadership.
Maybe I should be a bit more thought through and plan with this, but I look at, especially whether it's broadcasting or doing some speaking, it's hey, here's this door's been open, and I'm not looking to become the next Jay Billis or anything. I just have a different maybe vision for my life, but
Sure.
I want to step through this door, and I want to use this to just grow plainly as a communicator, but also, hey, there's a stage here, and how can I use that for good? How can I leverage that for, maybe it's opportunities to share the gospel in some ways. Maybe it's opportunities to um, you know build new relationships. And I really look at that as yes, it's a way to stay connected to basketball, but here's something that feel like God has opened for me that I want to take advantage of, and use it for some good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Really cool. Thanks for sharing. And I one thing I do pick up, just you talk about like vision for your life, just from following you on social media and hearing you speak, is just family is something that's really important to you. Being a good husband, being a present dad, and loved the little blue truck from that video that you guys had posted on the website. Just we read that a million times to our kids as well. But just what is it like for you, like as you're trying to be a connected father? What are some of the things that you're doing to invest in your kids, even though they're pretty young right now?
Yeah, Chad, I had a good dad. Um, but I also realized, man, I feel so ill-equipped to be a father in
Mm,
many ways. And I have twins that are 6, just turned 6. I have another that's going to be about 4, and then we have another on the way this month. So I have 4 sons, and I can feel ill-equipped and unqualified. But yeah, no, we do have a good father that his grace is sufficient, and so I say just prayer and leaning into him. But I'd say 2 things that, as I'm learning to be a better dad and husband, and is 2 things are to be intentional and to integrate. Okay, I think the thing that can be easy for men sometimes is to be passive, especially at
mm,
home and at work. You look at coaches. The best coaches have a vision, and they're disciplined, they're prepared, they speak life into they know the buttons to push, and they put so much thought and foresight into what they're doing with their team. Same thing in the business world. The best leaders do these things. But how are you at home? Like, I want to have a real vision for my family. I want to know my kids at an emotional level, and so to really be intentional is something that sometimes goes against my nature, where I want to sit back and just be a fun dad. And that's great too. We do that. We play and we wrestle and we do all those things, but how can I be intentional how I'm bringing them up and discipling them? And sometimes I feel like I have more questions than answers, but it's something that I hopefully am growing in, because it's something I really, really enjoy. And then the other thing would be to integrate.
mm.
I think in our culture, we kind of just outsource everything, and we don't look at family as a team. And so just that thought of integrating my family and my kids as much as possible in whatever I'm doing, and that can be difficult, but wanting to bring them in, wanting them to understand what I do for work, wanting them to um, or being involved in their education, being involved in their spiritual development. If I'm running an errand, something as simple as that, let me bring them with, or bring one of them with. And those are great times to talk through things, to learn. We were staining our deck, and it's messy, and and they're not necessarily helpful, but bringing them into that, it's such a great time to just be with them and teach them. And so being intentional and integrating my family really is what I'm trying to do as a dad.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We just had the same experience a month or so ago where we're staying in our deck, and my 4-year-old son has the mask on, and he's grabbing a sander trying to help out. So yeah, that's really
Well,
special
I
that
didn't
you
even put
guys.
my kids in a mask, so there we're just getting after it. So but yeah, I think just trying to integrate them in
That's
what I'm
cool.
doing is so important.
That's cool. And I think we have a lot of coaches listening in, and just that like life, work family balance is a struggle. But and with a 4th kid on the way, do you have any rules or disciplines, just to keep building your marriage? Anything that you and Teresa have been able to do to find that time in the midst of, three wild boys, I'm sure.
We would love a Caribbean vacation, but I don't know if that's happening anytime too soon. Um, we try to, and sometimes even a date night can be hard, but we try to
Mhm,
find times within the day. Is there a
mhm,
time after we put the kids down that we can just connect consistently? Maybe it's not every night, but maybe it's 5 or 6 nights a week
mhm.
that we can connect. Just her and I. I think is incredibly important. And I'm sorry, what else did you ask there?
Yeah, just any rules that you have to, like set work aside and just trying to be present so that you can connect with your wife.
Yeah, like I said, once the kids go down, putting our phones away when possible. And I would say a
Hmm.
rule. When I think of rules,
Hmm.
I'm always like, how can I bring my kids? There's
Yeah.
stuff going on. So much stuff is like we don't want kids. Not if my kids can come, if family can come, all right, I'm going to be there.
Same.
Much more likely than if it's just me. Oftentimes that's a no unless it's something that's just really important for me to be at from a work or whatever standpoint. Um, Kind of more of a rule is if the family can join, I'm in.
Same. That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, well, last question, just you can hear your faith is so important to you, and yeah, whether you're commentating or being a present father, just curious, what are some disciplines that you have in your life so that you can, stay full, so that you can pour out through the community and throughout your household.
Disciplines, would be one. I'm trying to, not just the priorities of faith is number one. Okay, like I want faith to be kind of at the hub of everything. So it's not
Mm,
like, okay, well, I can check this off. Not I hope that that's influencing how I am at the dinner table, at in a business meeting, on the basketball court. So I start my days in prayer and in the Bible. um, but I'm really working on, can that just continue to, not just, okay, I check those off now and we went to church on Sunday, but like that can be a part of every day, or throughout the day, is really important. And then for me, beyond that too, is I think of just the spirit, the mind, the body, and hopefully the spirit is through it all. But it's for me. I just, when I'm working out, I got to get a sweat or something in. That really helps me from a discipline standpoint, from how I feel.
yeah.
I want to be a good steward of my body, and then the mind too. And some of this is more maybe on the theological side, but just if when I'm reading and feel like I'm trying to better myself in any way possible, just seems to springboard me to be a better dad, to be a better coach, to be a better leader in whatever I'm doing.
That's really good, man. Thank you for sharing that, and just sharing your heart and more about your story. Is good to get to know you better here. But just as we're moving forward, is there anything that we can be praying with you guys about?
Top of the list right now, we got his baby going to be, he's going to be here this month. It's October. And so just, of course, the health of the baby and my wife. And then I think for the rest of us, three boys and myself, just welcoming a new little human into our family. I think there's a lot there that we're excited about. There'll be challenges, but yeah, we're praying about the health and just everything as we become a family of six.
Man, one more. You got a basketball starting lineup, man. That's
We're going to hit
exciting.
the
But
transfer portal for that one, I think, if that happens.
good stuff. Well, let's just pray and we'll close it out. Lord, we just thank you so much. Thank you, God. You are a loving Father, and thanks so much just for the work that you've done in and through Trent. Um, God, thank you so much for him just being a bright light there in Champaign Urbana for many years now, God. Just pray for this pregnancy, pray for this baby, and that your hand would just be upon it all. And pray, Lord, that you would just help Trent and Teresa just raise up these boys to just be world changers. Pray that they know you and just follow you all the days of their life. I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.